I'm not a complicated man. I like cinema.
Spent that whole summer with me in my room watching movies every day.
I love the movies.
I love the movies.
I love the movies.
Welcome
To the house
of 1,000
movies.
All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode, House of 1,000 Movies. Today on the podcast, we got a pretty special guest from Scarecrow Video. We've got Kate Barr, and I was over in Scarecrow Video a couple weeks back at the time of this recording. I had a work trip that took me to Everett, Washington, and on my way back to the airport to Seattle, I knew I had to stop in. I asked people, followed me. I said, what can I do in Seattle? You know me. What would I like? And everybody, I must have had 50 responses, said, go to Scarecrow, go to Scarecrow. I said, okay, I'm going to go. I went in, unbelievable experience. It was so cool as a physical media lover, collector, like the world's largest collection, I think, is right there. So I got to step into it. I thought I had a big collection. I'm nowhere close. I bought some stuff. It was a ton of fun. So Scarecrow was awesome. And then I heard the news about the fundraiser that Scarecrow was running. I said, I got to reach out. We got to talk about this, get them on the podcast, help them out and support them because it's an incredible place. So Kate, thank you for coming on. Really appreciate you taking the time. Could you give a little introduction just to who you are, what you do for Scarecrow, what the mission and the story is right now, and what Scarecrow Video is all about?
Yeah, Jeff, thank you so much for having us on. We really, really appreciate it. My name is Kate Barr, and I'm the Executive Director of Scarecrow Video. I've been employed at Scarecrow since 2013, but back in 2014, myself and a group of the staff members got together and we formed a nonprofit. And then at the end of 2014, we raised the money and we took over stewardship of the collection. So up until then, it was running as a for-profit business. And since 2014, we've been running as a nonprofit. And we're doing so because we are one of the largest video collections in the world. We're certainly one of the largest accessible ones. Most collections of our size are usually held by private institutions like colleges or universities. Obviously, Library of Congress has an enormous collection. We still think that we rival it in a different way, and we can talk more a little bit about the magnitude of our collection. But one of the things I usually like when I'm talking about Scarecrow, I usually like to start off asking people to help give context, because when you say a number is just a number until you have context for it. And so I usually like to start off by asking, how many titles do you think Netflix has available online for streaming?
It's so I will probably have a different answer than the average person because I
you
try
know
to
more.
pay attention to that. But I want to say, like, oh man, counting their originals,
Everything.
I would, probably 4,000 or 5,000.
Yeah, so that's actually a really good guess, and you're right. It kind of goes all over the map. Like I'll have people who will say 500,000.
Yeah.
But the actual,
not that.
no, yeah, it's definitely not that. The actual is about 3,000 titles,
Okay.
and then if you put Amazon, Netflix, and Hulu together, it comes to like roughly over 40,000 titles, and we currently have 148,000 titles, and we grow by 3,000 to 4,000 titles a year. So that's sort of it in a nutshell. But for any kind of math nerds out there that want to geek out over these numbers, it actually isn't an apples to apples comparison, because most of the streaming services count each episode as a single title. And we count the entire season as a single title. So if you think about it, like if you took a season of Mad Men, they count it as 24, whereas we count it as 1. So if you were to actually go through our collection, and there aren't enough hours in the world to be able to do this, but if you were to be able to go through our collection and go through not even just television shows, we have animated collections, and, what about all of the special features that are on there? And, do they get counted as separate titles? I mean, easily it would quadruple the number, if we were trying to actually do like an apples to apples comparison.
I did not know that they counted that way, because I've seen the numbers and I knew, like, what's available on physical media is far superior to anything on stream. But if they're counting like, yeah, 26 episode sitcoms as 26 titles, then they really have a lot less
They
than
do have a lot
what they
less.
claim to have.
Yes, that's exactly it, which
That's
is
crazy.
why, they're what Netflix has done exceptionally well. I mean, better than I think I've ever seen any other company do, is sell an idea. They've sold the idea that everything is available online for streaming. And people have gobbled that up, and they've been selling that idea for years. Even when they were doing DVD rental by mail, they were selling that idea. And it's just not true. It's just absolutely not true. And obviously, for people who are really into movies, that they don't want to just skate on the surface. They want to go deeper. You learn that pretty quickly, right? I mean, you
Yeah.
kind of run up against that wall pretty quickly. Um, for most people who are just interested in the latest thing that has come out, I think they'll be more than happy with streaming services because that's what they really cater to. But anything beyond that, anything from, foreign countries or fringy or from our past, even our recent past,
Yeah.
it's not going to be there.
Yeah, no, that's the bucket that I fall into. I think a lot of people listening and watching would fall in the same bucket. I mean, I know I look at my collection and I'm like, I recommend movies to people. I just did it the other day. I was at my local video store
Hmm.
and somebody asked for a recommendation and I gave it to them and I was like, and they were like, where can I watch it? Because they didn't have it in the store.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? I don't think you can actually. I'm giving you recommendations of things that I have on a disc, but if you wanted to go home and watch this right now, there's no way to do it. This
Yeah.
is the only way
Yeah.
that you could watch this, which they were super intrigued by and they thought the movie sounded great. And I was like, I'm sorry, I just gave you like but like you'd love this movie and there's no way to get it. And that is, I look at my collection, I'm like, man, to get even 30% of what I have in my collection
Hmm.
across streaming services, I'm spending hundreds and hundreds of dollars because
Yeah.
I'd have to get all the you have to get the Criterion channel and Netflix and
Yes.
Prime and Shudder
Yes.
and Arrow Video's channel and I'd have to be on 25 different services, and at
Yeah.
that point it's like you can't even afford to do that. That's why I've
Exactly.
always curated my own little, it's my own video store.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
love what you guys do with that whole aspect of it is like in the rental option, which has obviously just like fallen off a cliff,
Yeah.
is so important for access, and it's the cheaper option, and it's just it has so much that you can't get anywhere else. And I'm sure you get lots of like, I was in there, I was like, there's people of every age range. It's not just
Yes.
like the old guy who needs DVDs. It's me, it's college kids, it's kids in high school who are trying to explore new stuff. It was
Yeah.
really cool to see because streaming just kind of caters to the mainstream, to the
Yeah.
average Joe. And your
Absolutely.
your store really opens that up a lot wider.
I was actually at a screening. So we have this. We got this grant that allowed us to do digitization of some of our rarer stuff, and to be honest, it's like orphaned rare stuff because there are issues around doing that. Like we don't have the rights to go and digitize Casablanca, right? And then
Right.
so this is stuff that has been orphaned, but we do still have a ton of really interesting stuff in our collection that is orphaned and that we do feel more comfortable that we could do, and it is worth preserving in this way. And we did a screening. The nonprofit we work with to do the digitization, we put together like a clip show screening of some of these things that we have done, and we just did that screening fairly recently. And the reason why I'm mentioning this is that as a thank you for coming to the screening, I brought VHS, and it's like everybody got one VHS, and they got to pick. So there was like 350 count boxes out on a table, and it's like just pick whatever you want, and it's a little thank you, what a party favor, I guess.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of like 20 something year olds that were just enamored of this. One of the things that was in the box was a VHS of Blue Velvet, and they just thought they had died and gone to heaven. They were like, "Are you serious that I can just take this?" And I said, "Yes. In fact, please do." I mean, we have just this past week we had somebody bring in, I don't know, it's probably close to 300 VHS. We get those
Mm.
kind of donations on like a weekly basis now. In one day, we had somebody bring in close to 300 VHS and 200 laser discs. So, you know,
Wow.
yes, if we can kind of recycle that, if the Gen Zers are fascinated by this technology, you know, whatever their relationship with it, it's going to be very different than what my relationship was with this physical media. But that's okay. You know, that's okay for them to you know, for all of us to have this different sense of what it means in our life, as long as it's getting appreciated. I mean, to me, that's, I think, the most important thing. And then,
Yeah.
you know, thinking about the story that you were telling when you were making the recommendation, I mean, I think it's a wonderful opportunity for that person to go to whoever owns that video store and say, hey, would you consider bringing this title in? You know, we look for that guidance all the time. I know we have a ton of stuff, but we certainly don't have everything. Nobody has everything. And it's wonderful if people kind of say, hey, you know, there's this great thing that you guys don't have in your collection. And if we can track it down, we usually try to do so, because we are trying to, before all of this disappears from the landscape, we are trying to bring in as much as we possibly can so that we can steward it forward.
Yeah, that is actually, it's sort of what we ended up doing. I said, well, let's go ask, because this is the
Yeah.
beauty of, I can't ask Mr. Netflix to
Yeah.
add a title. So let's go ask. There's a store manager here. And we went up and they said, hey, yeah, you know what? That's like it was like a manufactured on demand Blu-ray
Yeah.
or something. But they were
Yeah.
like, we can get it. If you give us 2 weeks, like they
Yeah.
took the address down. They said it'll be at your door in a couple of weeks. We just got to go special order it. And it was like, see,
Wow.
there's the beauty of it,
Yeah.
because you cannot where would you ever get that kind of pull
Yeah.
anywhere else? You
Yeah.
only get that at a video store with real people, and they're usually enthusiastic about it too. Like
Yeah.
they care.
Absolutely.
It's about film, not about business. That's the kind of way I look at the streaming services too, is they're software companies
Yes,
at
they
the end
are.
of the day.
Yes.
And so while they've created some cool original stuff, but at the end
Mhm.
of the day, they're a software company first,
Yes.
and they're selling you a
Yes.
service. It's a SaaS company.
Yes.
And unfortunately, that's the way some of the major studios are going too. And I'm like, we need
Hmm.
to pull back. And these places, Scarecrow is one of these places where it's like, you need to pull these back in and make sure that they stay alive, because I think there is that fascination with Gen Z who grew up
Hmm.
just everything's at your fingertips. I
Hmm.
mean, YouTube is what, 2005, 2006. So like,
Hmm.
if you were born in the early 2000s, you've had everything at your fingertips forever.
Yes.
And kind of like vinyl records for millennials, I think, which was the big
Yes.
thing for people my age. It was like we missed that
Yeah.
technology completely,
Yeah.
and we want to experience it
Yeah.
in cassette
Yeah.
tapes as well. Like those
Yeah.
came back, and I keep thinking I'm like, I hope the same thing happens, because then it's like a gateway to, oh, okay, so this thing's on VHS, and then I'll buy a DVD player, and then maybe get some of the latest restorations and remastering that like these really cool boutique labels are doing, and keep these guys in business, which helps everybody, hopefully.
Absolutely. And the thing is that you think about your children then, right? So your
Yeah,
children now though have you to expose them to physical media because you have your
right.
own private collection. And so it is, I think a lot of it is really about making memories. It's
It
and
is.
when we started as a nonprofit, the two community-based programs we started right away were a silver screeners program, which is still going on, which is us going out into the community to senior community centers and doing screenings and having like a film discussion afterwards. And then the other one is the other end of the spectrum, where we did a program called Children's Hour, where we actually coordinated it with our public library, which is directly across the street from us. And it was kind of like reading time at the library, except that instead of just reading a book, which we did read books, we watched videos and we did activities, and they were all around a specific theme, because we wanted to be able to show, well, one, it was about making memories, so now
Mhm.
for all of those kids that were able to come to that, it was a new memory that they were making in our space. And it was also a way to just say there's a different way to look at these videos than just saying this is pure entertainment, or this is, there is the ability to use these as learning tools. And whether or not that is so, some of the clips that we pulled to show children weren't just children's shows. We weren't just like putting a video on and pressing play. We spent a
Right.
lot of hours. I definitely borrowed a lot from David Attenborough. And, I was going into the documentary room and pulling things from the documentary room to be able to share with children, because I think that, and we were hitting kids that were like preschool to kindergarten age, so they're on the younger side. But we were doing like holidays around the world, and there was a ton of stuff in the documentary room from travel shows that showed these incredible festivals all
Yeah.
over the world. And what a wonderful opportunity to expose children to that.
Yeah. And yeah, it is like, it's definitely something that's missing in, with my kids. I look at the shows that they have
Hmm.
and what's available, and like what I grew up on with these VHS tapes that we could get access to, and you could rent them from the library or wherever.
Hmm.
um I had so many like education, like I remember them to this
Yeah.
day. Like you said, it does create memories. Like I
Yeah.
can vividly remember some of these, and I've gone and looked for them for my kids, and it's like they don't, i I don't know where to find them. I could find a copy on eBay if I'm lucky. They're not
Hmm.
digitized most
Hmm.
times. I can't find them on YouTube or anywhere else. It's almost like that part of my memory is gone unless
Right.
that tape
Right.
exists. Somebody
Yeah.
made that. It came out on a tape, and that was it. It never went to DVD, never got digitized. Like
Yeah.
there is some really good stuff out there that is, it's, yeah, sure, it's a little bit, it looks dated, but the information in it's not dated. It's very
Correct. Yeah.
educational, and it's
Yeah.
presented differently
Yes.
than
Yes.
the way that these shows are presented on streaming, because streaming is, whether you're 3 or 300, it's to hook you to watch the next
Right.
episode, and it's like
Right.
high frequency, high intensity.
Yep.
I try to, like, my kids now still watch stuff from like the 80s and 90s,
Hmm.
because I'm just like, it's better for their brains and more educational. And like, I wish I had more. I have some VHS tapes actually of like children's stuff, and I'm like,
Hmm.
watch this. Don't watch the crazy stuff that's on YouTube and like just the constant dopamine hit that they want you to have.
It's a different pacing. It's definitely a
Yeah,
different
it is.
pacing. Yeah.
And I think it messes with people, right? I know kids now tell me like they can't even sit down and watch a movie. They're like, a
Yeah.
movie is an hour and a half long. Like, I don't have an hour and a half. I have 20 minutes. I have 5 minutes. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like it's,
Right. Right.
so, and that's just the way their brains have been wired. And so I'm
Yeah.
happy whenever I see them go back and grab a VHS or DVD and I see that, I'm like, good, like let's rewire that brain a little bit. It's so
So I think
important.
there's a wonderful opportunity, right, for folks
Yeah,
of your generation to help make new memories with the generation that's coming up behind, right? And
absolutely.
I think that, so I continue to hold out hope that this isn't just something that we're just all slowly going to die off and nobody's going to care anymore. And I think that we can build enough stewards, and it is somebody, when this was, I think, right after we became a nonprofit, we got interviewed for a local newspaper, and the woman who was interviewing us said, oh, like she had this aha moment, and she said, oh, you guys are the caretakers of all our memories, aren't you? And I
Hmm.
loved that. And I was like, yeah, because a lot of these things that are in our collection, they're memory touchstones for people. It's this bringing back the person you watched it with, or the situation you were in your life. It allows you to it's almost like a little time machine that takes you
Yeah.
back. And whether or not it's like a silent movie where I might not have any relation to 100 years ago, but I'm fascinated by what I can learn from that. Or whether or not it's something much deeper and personal, where it's a time machine back to an earlier part of my life. I think it
Hmm.
just, in both ways, can be very transported.
And I was gonna say, one of the things that impressed me the most too was when it comes to like those memories. There's a big cultural aspect of that
Hmm.
too. And when I
Hmm.
was walking through, and I mean, I know that there are many countries that don't have the means to do as many restoration or preservation efforts
Hmm.
as have been done here, and even here we have a hard time keeping up with everything.
Hmm.
um, and you had so many films from, I was at your store. This is funny. I was there with a guy I worked with who had flown in from India for our
Hmm.
work conference, and I
Hmm.
brought him because he was fascinated.
Hmm.
He was like, "You're telling me this exists?" And we were going through the aisle of the movies from India, and he's like, "Oh my God, I haven't seen this in 20 years.
Oh,
I didn't
wow.
even, I didn't know this exists. This is from my childhood. We don't have access to this. Like, I don't
Yeah.
have this
Yeah.
anywhere." And then I'm going through and I'm seeing all the different countries and the cultural impact that's there. And I'm like, how many of these are truly, still floating around in these cultures, in these countries, but you guys have them. And it's like, that's such a cool thing, because somebody comes there and truly, you could come from anywhere in the world and find that childhood memory
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
Scarecrow, just because of the how large the collection is. It was so impressive. I was blown away. I was like, there's a North Korea section. It's like, I was telling people about this at my local video store. I said, you guys wouldn't believe that they had like 10 movies from North Korea. But I was like, but how interesting is that, to get an
Yeah.
inside look at that culture and
Yeah.
what they're making? I don't even think people know they were making movies, never mind that these exist and you could watch them. Like, it's so fascinating. So like that part of it, the cultural part of it too, just the impact that this all has, not just us here in North America and kids, like seriously the entire world like needs to
Yeah.
come in and they'll find something.
Well, and that is, I think, what really differentiates us from a lot of other collections, and also I would say sets us apart from even like the Library of Congress. Their remit is about preserving things made in America. And for
Hmm.
us, we are currently representing 138 countries, other than 138 countries, period, which is interesting because we've added more countries, in part because people donate things to us, which again is a wonderful way for things that we would never have the opportunity to have access to. So, for example, I think it was like 2019, or it must have been the end of 2019, because I know we processed it during the pandemic. Somebody donated like over 200 films from Africa. It was primarily from Ghana, Kenya, and Nigeria. And, the African film scene is very ephemeral, and it varies from country to country, the degree to which they have stability within that industry. But in general, it's pretty ephemeral, and it's pretty hard to come by things because it's there momentarily and then it's gone, right? And
Yeah.
so to be able to have an influx of movies on that scale, it was just, I mean, what a gift. It was incredible. But and yeah, there's other things. So Library of Congress. Sorry, my thoughts are going in two different directions. But the Library of Congress, they're strictly focused on just what is made in America, as they should be. They're getting taxpayer money. That's what they should be doing. Not every collection can represent everything, which is why it's important to have a whole myriad of different collections, because they specialize in different ways, which is one of the reasons why we also really love video stores all over the country that are able to continue, because we know that even if their collection isn't the same size as ours, there are still things in that collection that are going to be very special and very unique, because everybody curates in a different way. And
Right.
so it's really important to continue to have all of those. There's no possible way we could have everything on the face of the earth. It's not possible. And so this way, this patchwork allows there to be accessibility in different regions. So, some of the things that might be in your video store might be more specialized, local filmmakers and local films that are specialized to your area. And we just wouldn't have access to that. So, that's really, really important to continue to steward that forward.
Yeah, and that is, there are definitely some regional differences, stuff that I saw when I was out in your shop and Scarecrow, that I was like, never heard of that before, but I could come over this way and there'll be like some. I grabbed one because I was like, I feel like this is culturally relevant and somebody should own it that cares. Like, it was
Hmm.
up for sale,
Hmm.
and it was a documentary about one of the neighborhoods in Boston in the 70s and 80s, and some of the racial tension and the reform that happened. And it was like a 60-minute documentary on a VHS tape, looked like somebody had made it. It was not mass produced. And I was like, I
Hmm.
feel like
Hmm.
I feel like I don't want this to just go in the trash, so I'm gonna buy it and just keep it as part of my collection. But there are those cool little
Yeah.
like regional things, and there are different local filmmakers who have things over here, and you may not have them, and that's, you know, it
Yeah.
is important that like these places exist. I'm very lucky that we have this local chain in New England that has multiple stores and does a good job. Um, but you know, I guess that's where I look and I go, what is the future to make sure that all of this stays like available and accessible? Because I know it's not cheap to store
Right.
it all and pay
Right.
for the space. And, you know, there've been other places like Alamo picked up the whole like Kim's Video
Yes.
Underground
Yeah.
collection and put it in. But, you know, that's not all of it. It's a very small portion that they're actually
Right.
displaying. So what is, you know, what are your thoughts? Like, what's the goal here with the fundraiser and how you move forward and keep this open? Because I was reading like the state of Washington said you guys are a cultural museum, right? Like you were
Yes.
named, and like that's the way I looked at it when I told
Yeah.
people about it. I was like, this
Yeah.
is, yeah, video store, fine, but like this is culturally relevant, like
Yes.
landmark. Like this needs to be preserved. So how are
And
you going about that?
that's how, when we became a nonprofit, one of the big things that we really struggled with, is people continuing to view us as just a video store, and how do we change that narrative? And to be quite honest, 10 years in, we're still trying to change the narrative. Because I fairly recently, like within the last year, submitted a grant application and got it rejected, and the reason was we don't fund video stores, even
Mm,
though I started off by saying we are classified as a cultural museum. It doesn't matter. It's what's in people's minds, right? How do we begin that sea change that we can shift people's perspective about what these are? So we began calling them our cultural assets.
mm,
Every single thing that is on our shelf, we view as a cultural asset. And some people have said, you mean even that crazy Thai direct to video martial arts movie? And the answer is yes.
yeah.
Yes. I Because we can't fully appreciate in this moment everything that is going to be important down the road. So when I watch movies from 100 years ago, when I watch movies from the silent era, I learn so much about the culture at that moment in time. Not even the things that were doing intentionally. Some of it is just things that they were doing because this is the way you just did things, and they were just doing what they normally do. They weren't even thinking about it. And now looking back, wow, it's like peeking through a window. Like, again, getting in that time machine, going back 100 years ago and peeking through the window at what life was like. The things that we can learn anthropologically, the things that we can learn from
Yeah.
that time are really significant. And when you think about the fact that 90% of all silent films are completely lost. So 100 years ago, we had another change in technology. We went from silent to sound, and it was another massive technological shift. And at that time, the distributors and the filmmakers, they took a look at everything that was in their vaults and in their basements, and they're like, nobody's going to care about this. And an enormous amount of it ended up off of the Santa Monica Pier. They just
Mm,
like rolled it out and dumped it into the ocean because they had to make room for the new wave of what was coming. My hope is we can learn from that mistake and say, okay, well, wait a minute. For those of us who love film, the thought that we have lost 90% of what was made at the beginning of this whole adventure that we're on with this art form is just heartbreaking.
yeah.
And so I would like us to be able to learn from that mistake. And we had the home video revolution where stuff was going direct to video. And so why shouldn't that be as important as something that was made on film? Because it's doing the same function, which is giving us a window into a story that was being told at this time and at this place by these people. And
Right.
why, how can that not be fascinating? What are people 50 years, 100 years from now when they look back on these? What is it going to mean to them? It's going to be something very different than what it means to us. And that's okay. That's the whole function of trying to be stewards, meaning taking these into the future so that it isn't just for our immediate benefit, it is for the benefit of future generations to come.
Yeah, there's a real like Library of Alexandria moment there where it's
Yes.
like, yeah, stuff just got lost forever and
Yes.
it's gone. I don't think people realize that, like, because we do have some access to like the big silent films. Like, yeah,
Hmm.
we've had things restored, but yeah, there was a couple decades of stuff that was just tossed. And
Yes.
yeah, that's what scares me about, there are some really great labels out there doing restoration work, but they're small teams of those shot on video, direct to video type deals where it's like,
Hmm.
this had no major backing. There's a lot of
Right.
like regional horror
Yes.
specifically,
Yes.
that's
Yes.
really unique and
Yes.
is, as yeah, it's as culturally relevant as, a painting, artwork, a book, statues, whatever
100%.
artwork. I mean, it's all these things that we are like, we preserve and have museums for. And for some reason, I mean, there are museums for film and movies, but it's like, why are they not treated? It feels like they're not treated as the same, like, culturally impactful thing by the masses. You ask film people like us, we'll say, yeah, of course, these are as impactful as any other piece of art. But in the mainstream, it feels like they don't get the same level of respect that artwork does or books do. And like, we make sure that, like, isn't every like book just like put into the Library of like, they have everything. And it's like,
Yes.
why are we don't treat it the same way? And I've always wondered why, because I do think it, I would argue some of them are more culturally relevant than anything that's been done. There are movies out there that changed the world.
Absolutely.
So should be right up there with Mona Lisa. Like,
Yeah.
why are we not at that level in that same respect that you have somebody scoff and say, "Oh, cultural assets for these movies." It's like, no, they are. They truly are. I don't know why that is.
One of the advertising campaigns I wanted to do, and we never raised the money to be able to do it, was just to create all of these images that is like, film is art. That's the only tag that's on there. Film is art. And then just because it is, and that's the problem, is it's not viewed as art, it's viewed as entertainment. And I think
Yeah.
that is the significant difference. When people hear video store, this is one of the things, again, these struggles of how do we change people's perception. When people hear video store, they immediately think Blockbuster. And so they're like,
Yeah.
oh, wow, okay, Scarecrow's a Blockbuster, who cares? And it's completely inaccurate, as you know, having walked
Hmm.
through our aisles. That's completely inaccurate. We are more like a library
Yeah.
in that sense, less about the entertainment, though that's a piece of it, as is music, as are books, as is visual art. It can be entertaining in the same time that it can be transformative, and I think that should be the very definition of art. I think it's too new of an art form. And so that is part of why, I mean, you think about how long have we been painting pictures? How long have we been
Right.
writing books? We need a few more centuries, I guess, under our belt before it's genuinely going to be treated as art. And like all good art, it began on the wrong side of the tracks. Right. So when it was coming about, it was looked down on because theater was the proper art form
Hmm.
for this sort of storytelling. And film, was really, really looked down on, which is in part why they moved out to the West Coast. One was weather, obviously, but the other is there just wasn't any snobbery out there about it. And so I think that it is over time, but we also have to keep beating the drum. These are cultural assets. Film is art. And so those are the words that I try to use when I'm talking about our collection, much more than I do just saying video. Even, we've had for the last 10 years an internal debate about whether or not we should even be called a video store.
Mm.
For some people, it's a warm and fuzzy feeling of nostalgia. But for other people, it's this marking of us. Again, video store equals Blockbuster equals commerce, entertainment,
Right.
commerce. And it's not helping us sometimes to be viewed that way.
Yeah, and that is some of the initial feedback when I posted um, my video about the visit and then the fundraiser. Was, yeah, there were comments, and this is just people not knowing any better, but like, well, yeah, it's a video store in 2024. Like, of course they're going to close. Like all the other ones closed 20 years ago. And I'm
Uh-huh.
like, that's such a simplified look. And then like, well, I'm not giving, the money you're trying to raise. Well, why should I pay them to just keep a video store open? And it's like there is something much larger, because you're right. When
Yeah.
I went in, it was, I mean, I wasn't sure what to expect. I read everything online. I'd never seen it. So I'm
Hmm.
like, okay, people said go to Scarecrow Video, and I'm like, this could be this tiny little place that has some VHS tapes,
Yeah.
or they could truly be as large as it says. And it is like a museum. A lot. I mean, I could have spent, I hate that I had a flight to get to, because I ended up almost being late for the flight, just spending so much time there, and then Seattle traffic didn't help.
Of course,
But
yeah.
but I was in there for a couple of hours, just walking up and down the shelves and looking at the different collections that have been curated, and it's like there's a human touch to all of it too. The staff members are picking their collections and writing little notes about, I noticed even like Star Wars, like there's a Star Wars section, but there's notes to tell you like, look, if you want the original unedited, like they're on this disc, and if you don't care, it's on this disc. And it's stuff that you don't get. You go on Disney Plus, you're going to get their version of Star Wars that's
Right.
current today. That's it.
Right.
That's all you get. You have no
Right.
options. So like the personal touch, the human touch, there was no algorithm that was making me click through 50 tabs to get to what I wanted, which was, something deeper than surface level. And I hope that people, that's this part of why I want to do this, is like, it's not just the video store. It
It's
really
not just,
is.
yeah.
It's culturally important. It's as culturally important as any museum when it comes to this stuff. I was just blown away. And so I wanted to clear that up, and also just like make it clear too that, well, we're not just donating money here to just pay a salary for somebody
Right.
who works. You
Right.
know what I mean? There's
Right.
more to it, which
Yes.
I'd love
So,
if you could explain
oh, well,
more of like
absolutely.
where it's going.
Absolutely. And but before I do, and I will, but before I do,
Yeah.
I just want to say I also think, and one of the things why we feel like our space is so special is when you walk through the door, you're starting a journey.
Yeah.
You get to have this adventure through one of the most magical film places on earth.
Yeah.
And you go to look for a thing. I'm going to look for this title. And along the way, all of these other things grab your eye, or, and you're like, what, wait, what a minute, what, a North Korean section? Well, how is that even
Right.
possible? Do they have a film industry? It's those sort of things, and your mind can just open in directions you didn't even know it wanted to go. That is one thing we are really, really missing. Having this algorithm that is tailoring an experience to us isn't pushing us in different directions, isn't giving us the opportunity to think about something new and exciting or different. And that's why we really feel like our space is really important. So there will always be people who scratch their head at our existence. We had somebody, I remember I was at the store when this happened. We had somebody walk through the door. This woman was coming in with a man. They were a little bit older. And um, she got inside the door. And as you know, there's a big entry, there's a big entryway. And then it
Hmm.
just is literally row upon row upon row of movies. And we're 2 floors, but it's a mezzanine, which means that you can see up to the second floor. And so not only is it row upon row, but you look up and then there's room after room after room of more videos. So they walk through the door, and the woman stopped dead and is looking around and finally says, I'm going to leave. I'm just going to Redbox. Like, it was just too much. It was just
Yeah.
too overwhelming. And that's why we do the special sections, is we
Hmm.
realize, like, where do you even begin? Well, why don't you start with some of these curated sections? And that's a starting
Right.
point. But there will always be people where It's too overwhelming. There will always be people who are only interested in the latest blockbuster. And again, you know what? Streaming services have you covered. You probably can sign up for Netflix and get most of your needs met, and that's
Yeah.
fine. Netflix or whatever, Amazon or whichever one, and you'll be fine. But that's not who we're talking to. We're not talking to those folks. So they're the ones in the comments that I just have to filter out, because they're never really going to understand, because it doesn't speak to them. It's not of interest to them. They don't want special features. They don't want a commentary track. They don't want all of those sort of added things that can help make it even more than just what the movie is. It's this movie, I get to experience that, and then I can have this whole learning moment by going back and watching some extra features that give me some context, or listening to the commentary track that gives me a depth of knowledge about what their experience was like in making it. Some people just don't care about those things, and that's okay,
Hmm.
as long as there's enough of us who do care and who do want to fight to preserve these things. And
Yeah.
yes, the sticker shock is there. I understand. We knew going out with this that this was going to be a bit of sticker shock. But we have been trapped in this vicious circle for the last 10 years of just sort of barely squeaking by and barely squeaking by. And that is not setting us up for a future. It's, in some ways, it's just a downward spiral, because the smallest little thing changes, as it did this past year, and it leaves us completely vulnerable and unable to function. What we need is to build more stability to be able to go forward into the future. And that is why it is such a high dollar amount, is because we need to be able to build that stability, which we have not had for the last 10 years. We have survived. Yes, we've made it through the pandemic. Yes, but our survival has largely been on the sacrifice of a lot of people working there. Our staff, me, myself included, we've sacrificed a lot in order to keep that place going. And now it's time for us to have a more stable existence. And in order to build that, we need this level of revenue. So this isn't about like, let's just fill this hole with money. This is about, we have a strategy of bringing in a new leadership team that will help secure that future. So, because the bottom line is that we were all just a bunch of video store clerks that got together to make this nonprofit. We don't know anything about running a big nonprofit. We don't have that background. We've taught ourselves a lot over the last 10 years, but really we need to be able to bring in people who are well trained and well experienced in what it takes to run a nonprofit of this scale. And that's the piece that we have been lacking. And and then at the same time, to be able to um, continue to give our staff a living wage, which is very important. Our average tenure at Scarecrow is 12 years. We have at about just under half of our staff, I think it is, 25 years or more. So these are people who have dedicated their adult life to nurturing this collection. And we feel like that needs to be honored. They are
Mhm.
also our assets. It's not just what's on our shelves, it's all of that knowledge that's in their brain. Nobody knows the collection like they do. I've been with Scarecrow since 2013. Still considered a newbie there. I mean,
Yeah.
because there are people who have just been there so much longer. And that's unheard of, whether it's a for-profit or a nonprofit. It's unheard of to have a group of people that are that dedicated and that committed. But I think they all understand how truly significant this collection is. And I think what we've not done as well as we need to, and again, this is where we need that help, is how do we tell people how important this collection is? How do we communicate this message? We thought we've been doing it, but I think we're all kind of wallflowers in a way. We kind of sit back and are like, yeah, we're doing our thing and we're trying to keep this going. But I think we need to be bringing in people who have the chops to be able to really get us a higher profile in our culture to say, this is why this place is so important. This is why we are fighting to preserve it.
Hmm. Which makes total sense. And when I was reading the message before I'd even posted anything, like this is what I responded to people is like, okay, this is a lot bigger than
Yes.
probably what you're just comprehending on a 20-second look at this. And
Yes. Yes.
I get that, but yeah, this is a lot bigger. And I mean, I guess this is just some of my ignorance on like how a nonprofit would work. But I mean, I assume grants and applying for the right grants
Yes.
and getting funding is a huge
Yes.
part of this. And so people
Yes.
with the connections and experience to be
Yes.
able to do that could
Yes.
keep you running for a while. Yeah.
Exactly that. It's a whole art form. And believe me, because I've
Yeah.
had to teach myself this, um, it is a whole art form. And I have been a part of nonprofits where there are really well trained and well experienced people as executive directors and development directors. And I have watched what they do, and I can't do that. I mean, I just, it is a skill set that people possess, and then also of course the background experience with it, but it is maybe even skills in the right, it's an art form. And
Yeah.
there are certain people who can do it very, very well, and then there's the rest of us that just kind of do the best that we can. And we kind of squeak by, and that's okay until it's not okay. And we're
Yeah.
kind of at that
Right.
it's not okay point. And again, because this is me losing my job, right? In a way, I'm the executive director, but I'm putting my hand up and saying, I'm at the end of my road of what I know how to do. And I want to step aside to bring somebody in who can do it even better and take Scarecrow forward. That's what it's
Hmm.
all about, is what does it take to move Scarecrow forward? And so it's that. But I also want to say that baked into that number is us making, if we're able to raise the full amount, would be us making some pretty significant enhancements to the point of sale system and website that we launched with last year. So we had done a big fundraiser, and we built this whole, from the ground up, system that is custom built for Scarecrow, and it interacts with our website. But we ran out of money, and there were certain really critical things that we weren't able to do that could benefit you as an end user. One of
Hmm.
them being, we want to have our sales inventory live on our website. So I believe you had been asking me in an email whether or not we had ever considered that. And that was always one of the things we wanted to have the ability to do. And we just ran out of money. But if we're actually able to raise this money, then we've earmarked a certain amount of it to be able to go towards those enhancements. So, um, all the used stuff that I was telling you guys about that gets donated to us and then goes out onto our sales floor, you can't see that unless you've walked through our doors. Now, we do
Right.
have an eBay store, and we do have an Amazon store. And so some of the more specialized things will go up onto that. But I'd love to not be paying them the fees. I
Right.
would love it to all just be in-house, and everything that's there, whether it's something that's 99 cents or whether it's something that's, $50, all of that would be available to purchase. So that's one of the enhancements that we would be making. Again, if we're able to raise the full amount. So part of it is bringing in the leadership team that we would need to go forward, but part of it is that we also know that the technology that we have in place does need some development itself, does need some improvement to make that experience even better, and again, secure us even more into the future.
Yeah. No, and it is not cheap. I think people look at setting up an online store and they're like, yeah, you just use, Shopify or whatever and just go for it. But as somebody who, this is my day job, is working in marketing in the digital world, it's
Hmm.
very, very expensive to do that right and scale it and have
Yes.
it be something that you can actually manage as a business
Yes.
versus you want to sell a couple of mugs online, yeah, you can open a Shopify store
Yeah.
or go to Etsy. Like there are great platforms that are easy enough. You need something bigger, and it's a lot to heavy lift. So I totally
Yes.
get that. But
And we
yeah,
looked
knowing what,
into it. I mean, we did look
yeah,
into it, and we have an online store, and we're trying to put some stuff up. That
hmm,
those 300 VHS that I was telling you about, a lot of it is kind of some more niche horror stuff and genre stuff. And so we're trying to cherry pick some of that out to put up on our store versus just putting it up on eBay. But what this enhancement would be real live inventory, so that
mm,
we're having to segregate it out and basically run like two separate inventories. We have the stuff that's in store, and then we have the stuff that's going to go up online. And actually, in reality, four different inventories: Amazon inventory, eBay inventory, our online store, and this. And it would be nice to
right,
just consolidate that into, here we go, it's all on our store. It's, it's real time updating, so that hopefully we wouldn't have the situation where somebody's in store and buys it online at the same time. That it would be updating quickly enough to be able
right.
to avoid that. So
Yeah, no, it
that's the
makes sense.
dream. That's
Yeah.
the
Well,
dream.
then and then you must have you have the rental inventory too,
Yes.
right? Which is
Yes. That's a
its
whole
own
other,
beast.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's a whole other thing.
Yeah,
It's
I
the
can
rental
imagine.
inventory. Yeah. And
So,
that is a case in point as to why we had to custom build our system.
yeah.
Is when everybody approaches it in the same way, and they're like, easy peasy. There's stuff we can get off the shelf, and we'll just kind of jury rig it to accommodate. But the company we hired, they went in with that attitude. And then after discovery, the discovery period, they said, oh, whoa, wow, wait a minute. So you want to run this whole rental system, and you want to run this whole sales system, and you want them to talk to each other, because believe it or not, on an almost daily basis, we have people come up and they say, I want to rent these three things and I want to buy these four things.
Mm,
And we need to be able to do that in a single transaction. And that's where the complication comes in, is being
gotcha.
able to do those two things at the same time.
Makes
And then
sense.
take that and expand it beyond just somebody who's visually in front of us, but is coming to us through the rental by mail or our online store. And it's just layers upon layers of complication. It's not insurmountable, but it takes money. That's sort of the
Yeah.
bottom line.
No, definitely. And that would be great because I had so much fun just browsing the sales section, and that's what made me ask the question. Was like, there's some great stuff in here. There's stuff I stumbled upon that I hadn't even heard of. There were some VHS tapes that I grabbed that were super nostalgic for me, and I know that's making a comeback. Is the whole
Yes.
VHS, like even just as display, like art
Yes.
pieces, as much as anything else.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's kind of why I do it. The movies I bought, I have on 8 different formats. I'm not going to necessarily put in the VHS, but I wanted Jurassic Park on VHS because
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
like that's the tape I had as a kid that who I don't know, it got donated, 25 years ago. I don't know where it is, but I got it back, and like that's important to me. That's that memory. So
Yeah.
that would be great.
And if you want to have that truly transportive experience, you put the tape on with all
Yeah,
of the tracking and the ripples, and it's
right.
all of that, right? It's in the VHS in some ways does have that equivalent to vinyl, because it's that sense of, like, with the vinyl, people saying, I like the hiss and the pops, and
Hmm.
those things that are unique to that format. And it's the same thing with the VHS, where you have the machine that's doing the tracking or doing the little splutter, and that is also that thing that's charming about that format. For some people who are purists, it drives them crazy and they'll never love it, and they'll never like, and then they're just like, no, that's not for
Sure.
me. But for those of us who do appreciate that format, it is those little things also that make it an enjoyable
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah, there's a big like analog movement right now that I'm really enjoying too, the
Yes.
nostalgia of it all. There's a big
Yes.
push for I'm a big horror movie fan. There's a big push for like that analog horror type
Mm-hmm.
of content that's been popping up all over social media and is a lot of fun. And so like I've dove back in, but I do think yeah, there's a life there for that. There's a life there for all of these formats because people are that it's that core memory and the nostalgia
Yes.
factor. And
Exactly.
yeah, online, I mean, I would be there. I'll be buying stuff when it's set up. Hopefully it's set up. And so like say in 5 years, call it
Hmm.
2030, right?
Okay.
everything goes the way you want it to. What's that future look like 5 years from now? What does Scarecrow look like, you think, in your eyes?
Well, my dream is that we would be able to stay in our space a little bit longer. And I'm saying it, I'm phrasing it that way because our landlord has told us that their long-term plans is to sell the building to a developer, which is sort of the wave in Seattle at the moment.
Yeah.
So we know that we're not going to be able to stay there forever. We do know that. But I'd like to be able to stay there for a few more years at the very least. And in the meantime, be looking for our new home, which I hope would be as equally amazing. For a while, when we were exploring new homes, I was actually looking to see if there were any churches for sale because
Hmm.
people have called us a church, a Mecca, that it does
Yeah.
have that kind of cathedral feeling about it. And I would love a space that has that sense of presence. But my big dream would be in our new space would be that it wouldn't just be us, that we would be able to partner with one of the local nonprofit cinemas, and then also the nonprofit that helps us with our digitization. I would love to create this sort of film center where we had cinemas and stuff going on there, where we had these digitization abilities that would help us and then help others in the community that want to do it. And then we would have this entire collection so that it would be kind of like this really unique and special film
Yeah.
center. Yes, I know other video stores have opened up their own cinemas, and we used to have a screening room for a while. It's, I guess, within the realm of possibility, but honestly, I feel like we've got some nonprofits that might also be looking for a home in the future,
Yeah.
and I would rather partner with them. I would rather just sort of cohabitate in this mega film space and talk about an incredible destination in the Seattle area. I think there'd be a lot of film lovers around the country, if not the world, who would be like, yeah, I want to check that place out. Go
Yeah.
roam through, go roam through. So in 5 years, we would be up to what? So 3 5 15,000, another 15,000, so we'd be probably approaching 165,000 titles, maybe. Roam through all those aisles, and then, oh, it's 4 o'clock, time to go watch this movie. And I mean,
Yeah.
it could be pretty amazing.
No, it's that full. It's that museum experience. You go and
Yes.
see the,
Yes.
you walk around the exhibits, and then there's a special, whether they have a theater or a presentation going on at a
Yeah.
certain time, and you
Yeah.
go. You spend a day. You can watch maybe some of the digitization efforts and some behind the scenes on that and how that's working. Like, I think that would be awesome. I was gonna ask, like, are there plans? Like, have you talked to other nonprofits? Because I've heard this from other video stores too, where it's like you develop this community of,
Hmm.
yeah, we've got the theater, we've got a restoration team, we've got like a cultural community
Hmm.
team,
Hmm.
and you all just come together and build that. So
Yeah.
I think that makes
Yeah.
perfect sense, and that would be awesome because we need more spaces
Yes.
like that. It's incredible that
Yes.
there are so many. I love the artists and I love writers and musicians and everything else, but there's a lot of spaces for those people. And I'm like, where are the film spaces?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
other than even local theaters have become so like difficult to keep open and run. And it's a chain movie theater
Yeah.
and it's streaming. And I'm like, well, where's that cultural center that
Well, and
we
as
can
you were
we can
saying
gather?
before, when you were at your video store and you made that recommendation to that person, and I think that hit the nail on the head, which is we get a lot of people through the door every day that, I mean, yes, they're there to pick up a movie, but even more than that, they're there to have that shared experience, to
Yeah.
sit and geek out with somebody for 15, 20 minutes, sometimes even longer, about this movie or that movie, or hey, did you hear about this, or check out that. Yeah, we definitely have people that come up to the counter and hang out for a while and just want to chat, and
Yeah.
that's what video stores always were about. They were always that community meeting point where people could go and just sort of hang out Because unlike a cinema where you have to buy a ticket and go sit in your seat, this is that library again, where you get to just roam the aisles and you bump into somebody who's looking at that movie and you start up a conversation about it. And I think we miss those places. We try to replicate it in the digital world, in the virtual world. It doesn't have the same impact to us as it does having that
Right.
face to face conversation with somebody.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. Um, well, before I let you go,
Yeah.
first of all, I want to tell you one funny story. This happened. I was up in Maine. We had talked
Mhm.
that I go up to Maine a bit. I was at a thrift store and I came across the Scarecrow video book, which was incredible. So
That's
just wanted to let you
amazing.
know they're still out there. It was on the shelf at the thrift store in Maine,
Wow.
and I I really wanted to get it, and then I said, you know what, I think somebody else would want this, and I have other ways of like I left it. Just
Uh-huh.
I figured somebody in the area would probably really enjoy this.
Yeah.
And I was like, I was almost like, I hope some like 18-year-old kid finds this and buys it
Yes.
and goes through it.
Yeah.
So I kind of left it for somebody who like needs it more than I
Yeah.
do, I guess, in a weird way.
Yeah.
But that was awesome. So I found one. They're out there. They're still out there in the wild. But I wanted to obviously give you a chance here. How can people help? What are the different ways they can help? I know
Mm.
there's monetary donations, and I've set stuff up on my Instagram where people can donate right through there. I don't know if we'll do, I'll put links obviously in all this in the episode, but are there other ways that people can support other than just a straight donation to the
Yeah,
film?
absolutely. The donations, memberships, really, really important.
Mm,
But also, just as we were talking about earlier, spread the word. How do we make that change? How do we make that paradigm shift in our culture to start to view these things as cultural assets? We do that by getting people like ourselves who are enthusiastic about that, proselytizing about it. Spread the word about Scarecrow, spread the word about the importance of physical media, that we are in this moment standing on the edge of the Santa Monica Pier. What
yeah,
decision are we making about these cultural assets? Are we dumping them into the ocean, or are we wheeling them back and having them for future generations to appreciate? As an aside, also, I just want to mention another story, because when you were saying that about, I hope an 18-year-old finds the guide, it reminded me of this woman came up to the counter looking for a Danny Kaye movie, and I helped her find it. And when I was checking out, from behind her, I hadn't seen her originally, but from behind her, this 10-year-old little girl peeked out, and the movie was for her. And her mom
love
was
it.
like, yeah, she's totally obsessed with Danny Kaye. And I said, I love this child. So I started talking to this little 10-year-old about Danny Kaye and what were the things about him that she liked. How else would she be able to have that experience of getting to watch his movies, to have that? I mean, we're talking about Danny Kaye, somebody who came up through vaudeville. What is
Right.
speaking to this 21st century child, to her, from that what in that person and his skill set is speaking to her? And
That's
I just
awesome.
found that fascinating. And
Yeah.
shouldn't we be able to continue to have those moments of discovery, whether they're for
Yep.
ourselves or for our children, or again for future generations to come?
Absolutely. I was gonna say shout out to that girl and shout out to her parents because they must
Yes.
be cool. They must be
Yes.
cool parents to get her
Yeah.
into that stuff. So I appreciate that. I'm definitely trying to do the same with my kids. I'm like, we'll watch all the latest stuff as much as you
Mhm.
want, but trust me, you're gonna be
Yeah.
watching some stuff that I loved and older stuff, and I'm gonna make sure you get the education that
That's
you
wonderful.
deserve.
That is
So
wonderful. Yet another way, I mean,
yep,
make memories with the next generation. I mean, I think that's another really
absolutely.
important way. But again, spreading the word. I think that because of how big of an ask this is going to be, and obviously we're out there trying to meet with larger donors and meet with foundations and things like that, to try and make this a reality. But it may come down to it having to be a grassroots.
Yep.
And the way the grassroots works is you got to spread the word, and you got to get people excited and understanding why this is so important.
Absolutely. No, that's a big reason why I wanted to talk to you selfishly just about physical media in the store. But I knew I've got the platform, so let's try to use it and try to spread that word and help any bit I can, because it really was a very cool experience, unlike anything I've really had anywhere else. I have some great stores up my way, but nothing compared to what Scarecrow had. So I want to
Well,
make sure
thank you
everybody
so
knows.
much.
Yeah,
Thanks for
of
inviting
course.
me. Thank you for having me on. I've really enjoyed our conversation, and I do hope that we are around for you to be able to bring your children to visit Scarecrow one
I
day.
hope so. Yeah, because I go out there. I'm going to be out there about once a year at least
Oh,
for work
wow. Okay.
for however long I'm there. So that's where the headquarters is. So I'm like,
Nice.
that's on the list now of a must do every time I come out. And
Excellent. Well, let us know the
yeah,
next time you're out, and we will give you a tour, take you
that
behind the
would be
scenes, see how the sausage is made.
that'd be awesome. Yeah, that'd be super cool. It'll be worst case, it'll be about a year from now when I go out
Okay.
for another trip for work. But
Great.
yeah, I wish you guys all the best. I'm
Thank
obviously a
you.
huge fan, and I'm gonna be supporting any way I can. So I hope it helps. And if you're listening and watching, even $5, wherever you can donate,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
share
We
share this episode, spread the word, whatever you can do. You can
we know
it can be
times are
free.
tough, but
Yeah,
get 10 friends to give $10, and boy, what a
right.
difference that could make, right?
Right. It's one Blu-ray. Skip a cup of coffee and
Yeah.
throw $5 into the pot, and yeah, you get a
Yeah, there
million
you
of
go.
those, and all of a sudden
Yes,
you got it. So
exactly.
yeah, we'll spread the
Exactly.
word. And if you're listening, watching, share it, tell people about it, share
Yes,
this
please.
episode, tell your friends, have them listen, because I think it's important to hear all of this and get the story. And hopefully now that you're all coming to the end of the episode, you understand why I was so excited about this and like enthralled, and why I posted and said this needs to stay open and running, because it's that important. So I hope that gave the context that I know I got. If you haven't been there, go, especially if you're in. I had some people tell me that they came up from Oregon and stopped in after my video, and a couple other people came in. So like, yeah, if you're in the area at all, visit. It's
Yeah.
incredible. If you're anything like me and you truly love movies and just like physical media, you're going to be, it's Mecca, truly is for for that sort of thing. So
It
just go.
is, and back in the '90s, because at the time the then owner George would like just jet off to Japan and to London and places like that on these buying sprees, and so he bought all of these super rare Japanese laser discs. People would come to Seattle for the weekend and rent a laserdisc player from us, rent a bunch of laserdiscs, and just spend the weekend watching movies in their hotel
Yeah.
room. So, we rent players. And if you want to come for a crazy film weekend, we're happy
So
to
cool.
set you up with some players and rent you some movies.
That's awesome. Yeah. That would be so much fun to just like, or get like a rent a place somewhere and just
Yeah.
like we're just gonna shut down and just watch movies for a week, and that's so cool. I
Do
love
it
that.
during our rainy season, because then you won't feel bad about
Seriously.
not going out
Right.
hiking.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Well, I really appreciate it, Kate. Thank you for taking the time. Like
Thank
I
you
said,
again for inviting
wish you all
us.
the
Really
best. Yeah.
appreciate it.
I hope it works out for everyone's sake, mine
Well, we'll keep
included.
you posted.
I'm selfishly hoping this works out too, because I want to come back. Hey there, movie buff. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of House of 1,000 Movies. I hope you had as much fun listening as I did discussing some of my favorite films. Don't forget, if you're into video podcasts, you can head over to the YouTube channel and hit the subscribe button. If you're already on YouTube, it's right there, so why not hit it? And for our audio listeners, make sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. If you've been enjoying the show, why not show me some love by leaving a 5-star review? It really helps me out, and it lets me know that I'm hitting the mark. And hey, before you go, a quick shout out to our sponsors. By supporting them, you're not just supporting the show, but also the content you love. Thanks again for joining me in the House of 1,000 Movies. Until next time, keep watching, keep listening, and keep watching great movies. Take care, everyone.